Thank you very much, guys, for coming. I think that the best way to start is for each of you tell a little bit of your history and the companies that you created.
Fred, thank you for inviting me to participate. It's an honor. So I've been an entrepreneur in Brazil's tech scene since 2003. So I think that qualifies me as a dinosaur. So my first company was a SaaS platform for learning management. So we used to sell to big corporates this platform to manage, learning programs, training, and how do I turn into a fintech entrepreneur? So I sold this company in 2015, when I sold the company, almost half of the revenues came from big banks, banks like Itaú, Bradesco, Santander, even BTG was also one of our clients, we were realizing that the banks were, having a really real hard time transitioning from, a offline distribution to a digital distribution, and we thought, me and my partners, we thought it could be a good opportunity to try to, since we were tech guys, it was a great opportunity to, leverage our knowledge and develop new technology platforms that could distribute financial products. So that was kind of the start of the idea. And besides that, as entrepreneurs, getting credit and working capital was probably the biggest challenge. It was, always an awful experience. It was tough to get money. So that's why we came up with the idea of creating a company that would provide the best experience for micro and small entrepreneurs to get, funded somehow. And that's how Biz Capital was born. So essentially what we do, we offer unsecured working capital loans for micro and small companies. And we started early 2017, so it's been almost 3 years on this new journey. And so it's a little bit of my story.
Okay, Freddie, thanks for the invitation. Thanks for having me today. OMI is a management platform in the cloud for small and mid-sized companies. In a nutshell, we put together ERP software, entrepreneurial education, and financial services all combined in an easy-to-use platform. And that's because we truly believe those are the challenges that holds back the Brazilian small companies' growth. And we are almost 6 years old. In 1 month, we will be 6 years old. And I'm a second journey entrepreneur. Before founding OMI, actually 15 years before, I founded another ERP company, but targeting big clients and large manufacturing plants. And as you can easily know, my life was not that easy competing with guys like SAP and Oracle and TOTUS in Brazil. But fortunately, I have the opportunity to make a good sell of this company in late 2013. And then me and my team, we started OMI. And like any startup founder, we don't know exactly what should be done, but I have a pretty good idea of what not should be done.
Thank you, Fred and BTG, for the invitation. It's great to be here with Biz Capital and OMI. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Volante. Volante is a marketplace for buying and selling used cars in Brazil online. And we launched in May 2017, so we're about 2.5 years old. A little bit of my story. Straight out of college, I had experience at a startup, but it was a media and entertainment startup called Esporte Interativo. That's when I figured out that I wanted to become an entrepreneur, but I did not want to work with media and entertainment. So I was lucky enough to get my MBA here in the USA. And when I went back, I worked at a large tech startup in Brazil. And then that's when I decided to become an entrepreneur. I joined forces with a childhood friend of mine, and we founded Volante in May 2017. I can talk a little bit about how we came up with the idea, or do you want to leave that for later?
No, that would be great.
Okay. So after experiencing 2 startups, after, getting my MBA here in the US, it became clear that I wanted to solve a big problem. The idea wasn't to work with something I was passionate about. I tried that with media and entertainment. That failed. It's not my passion. I'd rather leave my passion for my hobbies, and I became fascinated with the idea of solving a big problem, which would impact millions of people and create thousands of jobs. That was the goal. So instead of looking for things that I love to do, my co-founder, Antonio, he worked at McKinsey for quite a long time. So obviously we created a framework to come up with the idea for what to do. And this is very interesting because we were very pragmatic about how we went about it. So we basically came up with a few criteria before selecting a challenge and before quitting our jobs. Basically, we wanted to attack a huge addressable market. We didn't want anything that was niche. We wanted to solve a clear problem. So basically, when you go out with your friends and you talk about selling or buying a used car in Brazil, everyone knows it's a terrible experience and you're going to have some sort of headache. We also wanted to be involved in an industry where technology was poorly utilized, meaning, well, for cars specifically, I think the only technological evolution in the buying of selling of used cars is that the classified went from a printed newspaper to a digital classifieds, but the experience is still the same ever since like 1950. We also wanted a business that had foreign benchmarks. So there's a lot being done in China and in the US in regards to buying and selling cars. The experience is much better in those countries than it is in Brazil. And finally, we wanted a business that had revenue from day zero. We didn't want to create some sort of social media that you had to wait 2 years to accumulate users and monetize. We wanted to sell a car and make money the first day. So basically, we looked at these criteria, and then we thought about different industries, right? Because, again, we wanted to attack a huge problem. We looked at healthcare. It was too crowded, and we didn't know enough about the industry. We looked at logistics. Again, crowded. And then we looked at cars, and all the boxes were checked. There was no competition because although 14 million used cars are sold per year in Brazil, the largest independent player sells about 10,000, right? And it's just these mom and pop shops, meaning there's a lot of room for improvement. There's a lot of room for standardizing the experience nationwide. So it was very easy. Like after 3 weeks of brainstorming, we came up with a car idea. We quit our jobs, and that's how Volante came about in May 2017.
Great. I usually joke that my job description today is to disrupt the bank, and each of you disrupted each industry that you've been working with. So please tell me a little bit of how to be a small company and disrupt a sector that already have big players, except from Volante, but the other ones have big players. And what are the main difficulties of growing your business, escalating your business?
Yeah, I think, when you deal with technology, technology, I think, is the main, engine for disruption. And I think, especially when you compete, with big corporations, they usually have, a lot of problems with legacy systems. And legacy systems usually force them to move slower, and reduce the level of, innovation and new, product features, new releases of their platforms and products. Rafael from Rebel always, we have this joke. It's after 20 years, outsourcing software development to India, and having probably thousands and thousands of different developers working on software technology for a big bank, then it becomes a real mess usually, and it's a problem. It's a real problem, and it demands a lot of money to change a small thing. So I think being a disruptor is more about moving fast and being able to release and improve the customer experience in a much faster way than traditional players. I always tell this to people. People ask me, "Oh, you're such a crazy guy. You know, you're competing with big banks, trying to lend money to small companies. You know, you won't make money. It's so hard." And I always tell them, you know, I think when Nubank started, for example, and everyone, you know, I was talking to many friends that work on financial markets, and everybody was telling me the same thing. You know, oh, it's just an app. You know, Itaú can develop the same app, and you know, there's nothing. This is not a differentiator. You know, but the thing is, you know, 5 years later, Nubank now has 10 million clients, and still, if you want to cancel your credit card, you have to call Itaú's contact center and spend 20 minutes to cancel your credit card. And so it sounds so simple, and it is. But in fact, I don't know if there's anyone from Itaú or a big bank here, retail bank, but the thing is, if you ask for a product manager at any of these big banks, and you ask them why it's not possible to cancel your credit card through the app, and they say, you know, it's such a complex thing. You know, there are 4 different billing systems, and it's not possible. And I think that's for me, that's the key for being a disruptor. You know, it's using new technology, you know, using data to really move faster, make better decisions, and build better user experience for your clients.
And the main difficulties of scaling your business.
Oh yeah, no, I think on the scaling side, obviously when you're dealing with, you know, big brands that are well known, in our case, especially I think when you're thinking about financial services, you know, having a well-known brand makes a lot of difference. For example, we do lots of surveys with our clients, and the main objection we get from them is that although we are lending money to them, we are giving them money, but they think we are fraudsters. That's funny. We have, you know, lots of things to prevent fraud, but our clients think we are fraudsters, and they think that they will get their data and sell, I don't know, to someone in China or somewhere else, and like it's kind of funny, but I think to scale, this is probably the hardest part, because usually when you are disrupting, and for example, we are dealing with micro and small entrepreneurs, and I think Marcelo probably has the same issue. People are used to bad customer experience. So when you say, no, you get the money on the same day just through the app, they think it's a joke, or they think it's a fraud, because it's too good to be true. So I think my opinion to scale is really, I think building the brand and you know, leveraging confidence from clients is the hardest challenge.
Okay, in a first look, you may think that we are not actually disrupting anything, because small companies in Brazil, 90% of the small companies, they don't have a management software. So if you ask what's my main competitor, is the paper manufacturer. The second largest competitor is Microsoft Excel. So we are pretty much the very first system application adopted by those small companies. But on the other hand, this is a huge opportunity in Brazil with about 3 or 4 million companies in the addressable market. And on the other hand, when you look at this market, you can find a lot of competitors. And what we disrupted was first the way to find our clients. So instead of going like everybody else, since the very first day we partner with accounting firms, because in Brazil every company must have an accountant. It's not like in US where you can have do-yourself accounting. There's no do-yourself accounting in Brazil, so you must have an accounting. So we figure out that once we partner with an accountant, we have access to 100, 200 of their clients. And we also have a challenge time to find a way to persuade the accountant to be our partner, because we've been very lucky to find out that the job to be done is to scale trust and not software sales. And trust is a pretty different thing than software. In order to scale software sales, you just hire a larger sales force, but to scale trust is different, mainly in a country like Brazil. So we package all our sales model as a franchising model, and we started to recruit small entrepreneurs all across the country to run this process on the region. And that was, we have been very successful on this. Our KPIs like LTV over CAC was like 2 digits. So we had a great time doing this job.
Mauricio?
Oh, and one more thing. The financial services side is precisely like he said. They don't expect the services coming from us. So we are originating loans for small business owners, and they say things like that. I don't know if I can trust you. Oh, come on, man. We will put the money in your bank account. You don't have to trust us. We have to trust you. And once they realize that, okay, go ahead. That's a good interest fee, nice. So we are also changing the relationship from the small business owner with the credit providers and also with the banking services, because in Brazil, also entrepreneurs, they barely have access to the very basic banking and loan services.
So first about competition, and then I'll talk about scalability. In terms of competition, it would be naive to say that there's no competition in a market that's worth $100 billion annually. But when you look at franchise dealerships, the ones that are owned by Volkswagen and Ford, they focus on selling new cars. And when you look at the rent-a-car companies, which sell a lot of used cars, but their main focus is renting cars. And then you look at independent dealerships, and I've mentioned this before, 14 million used cars are sold per year. The largest player sells 10,000. We're going to become market leaders before we become 3 years old. So you can have a sense of the size of the opportunity. The way we differentiate ourselves from the competition is by creating trust and a delightful experience. We think our vision is that it's very unfair that the asset that will be probably the most expensive asset you'll ever own if you never purchased a home, it's unfair that the experience is terrible. It's unfair that you don't have price transparency, that you don't have a standardized experience in different parts of the country. It's unfair that you buy an asset and it depreciates simply because you're afraid of selling it yourself. So how we differentiate ourselves from existing players is by creating trust and safety. One of the things we have to do, and again, we're innovating, so people don't know that there's a different way to sell your car. People think either you do it yourself, and then there's risks of fraud, there's even risks of kidnapping, or you sell to a dealership, they're gonna take away 25 to 30% of the value of your car, but then you'll solve it in about a day. We have to educate the population that there's a third option, which is Volante, in which you have no effort, no headaches, and you receive a fair price for your car. So that's been challenging, and we can't rely only on Facebook and Google to do that. So we've been partnering with, for example, Global. We're very close to Global because we need to communicate with the masses. We don't want to be just in Rio and São Paulo. We want to be in all of Brazil, and we want to dominate this $100 billion market. And that goes into scalability, right? We are O2O, which means online to offline. The experience starts online and it ends offline because at the end of the day, you're buying a car, and the Brazilian population isn't yet ready to buy a car 100% online. Right now, we have 15 physical locations in Rio and São Paulo. The goal is to open physical locations in all of Brazil in the next 1 or 2 years. And by doing that, we are able to offer this delightful experience that we believe the Brazilian population, the entire world population deserves when it comes to used cars. So the challenges are opening physical locations. That's not easy. Fortunately, we've been able to find a model where payback on a single location is in 3 months. So we're not talking about fancy marble floors and the best part. We just want the customer to feel that this is a safe transaction, that they're paying a fair price, and that we're solving most of the friction for them. So in terms of scalability, opening physical locations, creating a powerful brand, because you have to remember that in Brazil, it's been so bad for so long that people come ready to throw rocks at us. They think we're gonna, just like Francisco was saying, they think we're gonna play them somehow, we're gonna steal from them somehow, when it's actually the opposite. We're trying to help them. But they've had such bad experiences in the past that we have to first educate them and then prove to them that we're doing the right thing, and actually you're gonna make more money and have less headache if you use Volante.
We had a panel with the venture capital fund managers over here, and they were talking about their thesis and the way they invest. And we've been seeing that the ecosystem in Brazil is kind of evolving a lot with new players and with deep pockets, let's say this way. All of you guys have already passed through a series of rounds. I would like to tell a little bit of the experience that you had and how you see the ecosystem evolving in Brazil.
Mauricio, start this time.
Okay. I'm going to try not to speak for so long this time. But I always say, so we're from Rio, Francisco and I. I don't know, Marcelo, are you from Rio?
São Paulo.
São Paulo. But,
From Rio as well.
Yeah, but there aren't that many tech startups in Rio. There's many more in São Paulo. So every week, tech entrepreneurs email me asking for help, and I always tell them, it's a great time to be an entrepreneur in Brazil. Finally, the ecosystem has evolved to a point where if you're talented, if you're tackling a huge problem in a huge market, you will have access to capital, and you will be able to hire a great team. We've been able to do that after 2.5 years. The other startups I've invested in or that I deal with have been able to do that. But if in the 90s there was a brainwash for you to work in the financial markets, in 2020, right now, there's a brainwash for you to work in startups, and that's a good thing. I think the impact that startups cause in a nation like Brazil is much bigger than if you go to a consulting firm or to financial markets. Nothing against, I know this public works there, but it's a great moment to be an entrepreneur in Brazil, because if you're actually solving a big problem, you'll have all the basic needs, and then it's up to execution. And then, you know, it takes time to see who's going to win or not, but at least we have all the ingredients necessary.
Okay, I totally agree to you, because that's a great moment in Brazil to be entrepreneur. And as Fred said, there are more money than good ideas in Brazil. So once you figure out a way to fix some real deep problem, you will have plenty of money to play with. And I could see in the last 6 years since we started a huge evolution in the venture capital markets. Just to have an idea, the very first investor from my company was myself. I had to do this by myself. And then we passed it through seed series, Series A, Series B last April with a venture capital fund from New York, Revolt. And we could easily see how the ecosystem evolved and how the investors know how to recognize those good ideas in Brazil and make good investment decisions. So we try to be in close loop with our current investors and the upcoming investors as well. And I think this is another very important thing to be done. On our very first round, we were flying below the radar. So I know how it's easy to raise money when nobody knows you. And that's a mistake we won't make again.
Yeah, no, I think the ecosystem has evolved a lot. You know, as I mentioned before, I started my first company in 2003, and I think it evolved not only in terms of amount of capital available, but also, you know, maturity of the market. So I think, you know, investors now understand how the game works. I think terms are more fair now than they used to be, you know, some years ago. And the most important, you know, people value, I think, tech businesses correctly. And there's always this discussion around valuations, whether they are too high or not. For sure, you know, market fluctuates, and sometimes we will see, you know, companies being valued in the wrong way, either, you know, with huge valuations or undervalued sometimes. But I think in terms of diversity of investors, from angel investors to growth investors, not only Brazilian investors and foreign investors looking for opportunities in Brazil, this is also growing really fast. I think like all of us have raised money from foreign investors and foreign institutional investors. So I think this change is still going, and the market is. I think there are many things will happen over the next couple of years, but for sure, when we look at the investments and the maturity of the market, it has changed dramatically over the last 5 years, I think.
Can I just add one more thing? So in 2013, a startup with a great team attacking a huge market raised a seed round and then was not able to raise a Series A, had to do 2 more seed rounds until a Series A investor would invest. And now they're a unicorn. That would never have happened in 2019 because there is money in the Series A. There used to be a gap from Series A to Series B to Series C. It was hard to get Series B and Series C money. That doesn't exist anymore because of SoftBank and all those new investors. So now it used to be very risky to quit your job and become an entrepreneur because even if you had money in the beginning, and you must remember that once you go on a VC track, there's no turning back. It's very hard to cut costs and then become profitable. If you go on a VC track, usually you're going up until an IPO or an acquisition, and there's no turning back. And then to get to the Series B and die for lack of money and having a good team and having a lot of traction, that used to happen quite commonly in Brazil, and that is no longer the case. There's more money than opportunity. So it's great to see all these people having the courage to quit their jobs, their high-paying jobs, because now it's not that risky as long as you execute well and you put together a great team, which is basically what was missing. Talent with the ambition and the courage to create huge companies in Brazil. That was missing, and it's no longer the case.
And just to complement, I think that's the reason why the funds that doesn't used to write small checks, they are engaging with the good companies pretty early than they used to do.
Yeah, that's good. And the mindset changed a lot. I made engineer in UFRJ, and when I left university, if I told my mother that I didn't got a job and that I was going to be entrepreneur, my mother would say, "Come on, Fred. Okay, sorry about you. You wasn't able to get a job." And today, if one leaves the university and say, "Okay, I'm founding a startup or a fintech," all the other guys will say, "Oh, take a look at this guy. This guy, you must keep an eye on." And talking about investors, what do you think it's a good type of investor that helps you, and the kind of investor that it's not good, let's say?
I have experience with both. So mistakes are made commonly in the seed round, where you have to get money from friends and family. And entrepreneurs must be careful when taking money from friends and family, because if the investor is not experienced or sophisticated in the startup world, they're going to ask for reports, and they're going to ask questions that are a waste of time for the entrepreneur and add literally no value to the company, as opposed to a good angel investor. And usually those are, tech entrepreneurs. So in my cap table, we have Canary, which is a great seed investor, tech entrepreneurs as angels, and then we added Monashis, Kazakh, and SoftBank to our cap table recently. Those are all great examples of good investors, because when you need help and you ask for it, they'll give it to you, but they will not call you every day asking for reports that literally tell you nothing about the business. So Francisco was talking about this. It's become much more entrepreneur-friendly in Brazil, and this is great obviously for entrepreneurs, but for the ecosystem, because that's how great companies are built. So basically, a good investor will not get in the way, will help when you ask for help, and will add value where they see value needs to be added because they have so much expertise. And they can see trends on a macro level, as opposed to the entrepreneur who has a deep dive into his specific industry, but the VCs are able to look at their portfolio and suggest things that make a lot of sense. So I've personally been lucky enough to have amazing investors, and it's made a huge difference.
Well, I think nowadays most of the investors, they know precisely what their role is. But if you go back 5 or 8 years, you will find a lot of investors in the early stages that asks for big bunks of the company to write a check, like $100,000. They want 50% of the company. And afterwards, you have to fix these cap table issues in the companies. And right nowadays, I think investors know precisely their role since the early stages. I don't see many, as you told, bad investors right now. Most of them, they know precisely what they are supposed to do on that exactly stage they operate on.
Yeah, I think the main difference, I think, from a good investor from a bad investor is really, I think, knowledge of the business. I mean, not necessarily, sector-specific knowledge, but understanding, a tech business, how it evolves, and, cap table. I think these are all important things. Luckily, I consider myself, also a lucky person because on every company I've started, I always had very good relationships with all my investors. So I think also being, a true partner. I think people don't understand that. Usually, they don't understand that, an investor, by the end of the day, is your partner. So people think it's kind of a different entity, but by the end of the day, it's a partner. It's someone sitting with you at a table, trying to make things work and to create a real, sustainable, successful business. So for me, it's really important to find investors that share the same values, that are really working together with you. But I think looking from a different perspective, trying to look from an investor perspective. And I know Mauricio also invests in startups. I'm an angel investor myself. I think founders must also understand, that an investor is someone that is risking their own money. It's someone that also wants to build a business, a successful business. So I think for me, founder investor relationships, the relationship goes well when there's this mutual trust and a common goal of building a great company. For me, that's the recipe for success.
So now that Francisco says that, just to complement, I agree 100% with the partner perspective. We view our investors as co-founders, not as bosses. A lot of entrepreneurs tend to think the investor is my boss. I'm only going to give them the good news and try to hide the bad news. But in our monthly board meetings, we spend 70% of our time talking about what's not working rather than what's working. So we see them as co-founders. And in the VC world, it's very relationship-based. Meaning, like, if you don't know the investors beforehand, it's going to be very hard for them to put money into your company. And the ecosystem has evolved to a point where your seed round investor, then your Series A investor, they introduce you to your Series B and Series C investors. And you start building those relationships way earlier than previously. And that's very helpful. And it kind of guarantees what I was talking about earlier, the survival of a company. Because once you go into the VC track, again, there's no turning back.
With so many good news about the ecosystem in Brazil, if someone gets excited and comes back to Brazil and decides to create a startup, what kind of advice would you give them? What are the things that they should take care of?
Well, first, pick a sizable, a big market to target. I think Brazil, as it was said on another panel before, I think Brazil has many challenges as a country, and I think especially if you want to do the VC track and create long-term sustainable tech business, I think the best way to start is really finding a real problem that affects millions of people or millions of companies, and try to create something disruptive for them. I think that's how it starts, building something that, affects just, a small group of people will obviously be a lot harder because it will be a lot harder to generate a lot of value. So for me, it starts with, a good sense of what types of problems I can solve. Another thing is really to partner, find good partners. I think, the essence of a company is building a partnership, especially, when we're not talking about, it's not the type of partnership that only involves, assets and money. So usually you have to, set up a team of talented people and, convince them to work really hard to solve this problem. So for me, it's really about finding a complex problem and try to solve a problem for many people, finding the right people to partner with you. And when I mean finding the right people, not only co-founders, but also investors, advisors, all the ones that are involved somehow with the company. So as Mauricio said, I think, should think of investors as co-founders. And so if you get this broader concept of who's involved with your company, trying to assemble the best team of investors, partners, that's for me the key differentiator to create, a long-term successful business.
Okay, I think I will take from where you stopped, because you said find a huge addressable market with a real problem. And I will add to that and something you have only have worked before, you have any kind of experience in, and you have a kind of life experience with that business. So I think in order to disrupt or to build something really great, you have to know about the market you're working on. Sometimes I know that sometimes it's good not to know, because they say if you're very brave in Maine, probably your food is just don't know what you're doing. But I truly believe that have a deep knowledge of the market you are operating on and about the core problem you are trying to solve is mandatory.
I agree with everything that was said. I think the only thing I would add is, since we're talking about technology businesses, to have someone on your team, if possible, a co-founder who is a technology person. Because in Volante's case, both my co-founder and I were business people. We were lucky enough to find a great CTO for our company who's building an amazing team. But that's not obvious. It's not something that will just happen. And in a market like Brazil, where the amount of developers and computer programmers that are graduating from university is literally 1% of the amount needed. I was talking to the Kazakh guys the other day, and just in their portfolio companies, which include Nubank, Volante, etc., Quinto Andar, they have more than 1,000 developer positions open. And when you look at the good universities in Brazil, I think we graduate less than 500 talented developers. So compared to China, which is like 100,000. So it's pretty absurd, the lack of engineering talent that we have in Brazil. If you're able to find a CTO or a co-founder that is a technology person with a long history in this world, he'll be able to put together an amazing team. And then you will truly become a tech company, because if you lack that expertise, it's just another brick and mortar company that won't have the ability to scale.
I just want to add to Mauricio's comment, because I think this is really critical. People want to build tech businesses without having anyone from tech. That doesn't make any sense, in my opinion. If you don't understand technology, it's really hard to disrupt things using technology. You can disrupt existing markets using other types of things, new business models, things like that. But if you want to use technology, having, sometimes even more than one person on your team that really, understands technology and understand new technologies from it, this is key for sure.
That's the same point Doug Leone from Sequoia raised some months ago in a conference in US. Having 4 minutes and having taken advantage of having over here the largest institutional investor clients and some very wealthy clients as well, why should these guys over here keep an eye on you? Final remarks.
Okay, I'll begin. So we're talking about $100 billion market annually. We're talking about extremely fragmented market, and Volante's goal is to not only dominate this market, but our long-term goal is to take 20% of a $100 billion market. The way we're going to do that is by becoming present in all of Brazil, offering a great experience for buyers and sellers. And the end game, which is, so SoftBank always asks, what's your $1 trillion plan whenever they're talking to an entrepreneur? And my answer was very simple. Instead of participating in the car ecosystem in Brazil, we want to become the ecosystem, meaning that not only do you buy and sell cars in our platform, but we finance the vehicle, we offer insurance, we offer add-ons, so that it's a one-stop shop for anyone who wants to own a car in Brazil.
Marcelo?
Okay, I think right now there are two competing theses running in the marketplace worldwide. The first thesis is payments and banking companies, they will bring software to their clients because they believe software will bring more stickiness to payments, will reduce churn and things like that. Okay? The second thesis is software companies that already holds their clients' life in their hands, they will add payments and banking service. Because, wait a minute, from their point of view, these are just commodities to be added to their offer. So if you ask me, which one will I put my money on? Of course, it's the second one. I believe that you can easily sell a credit card processing terminal to a restaurant, but you are barely scratching the surface of experimenting the client acquisition costs of replacing the restaurant software. And that's why I think software companies that really have the transactions on their hands will change this marketplace.
Chico?
Okay, so there are 8.6 million micro and small companies in Brazil. Over the last 3 years, we have received more than 400,000 applications, and 57% of the clients that have gotten loans from us did not have working capital lines before getting a loan from us, and 24% of them did not have any type of credit product before getting a loan with us through our platform. And on the other, so this is like one part of the need and the market, you know, screaming for a solution. On the other hand, you have a central bank that, you know, has been quite active. So on the last panel, people were talking about, you know, open banking, you know, instant payments, you know, higher competition, lower interest rates. So I think when you mix, you know, a huge underserved market with a regulator that is changing completely the dynamics of the market, we believe that we are in a very well position to disrupt this market because we understand, you know, data. We leverage data in a way current players are not leveraging. So we believe that if you believe this is a good way of disrupting a market, please keep an eye on us. If you think open banking is just, you know, another buzzword, forget us. We won't do anything.
Thank you very much for coming, and be sure that BTG Pactual will help you over the next steps.
Thank you.
Thank you.